Welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Listen in as we discuss all things business, growth and marketing with business owners, thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, founder of Roundhouse, the creative agency, Saul Edmonds.
Oh, hi, everyone, and welcome to the Grow Your Business podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Ben Hirons from Due North around the topic, the power of paid search online. Ben, how are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking.
Oh, thank you for thanking me.
Well,
we could go on for hours with that.
yeah, we could. That's very formal, but we're not going to, because we'll get stuck in a loop if we keep doing that. So, Ben, it's awesome to have you on. Thanks so much. Before we start chatting around this topic, just for people who don't know you, which may be many people.
I think it's most of the world.
Considering you're not a super famous person, although famous in your own right, just let everyone know about who you are, business. Ben's from Due North, so feel free to tell everyone about Due North and anything else that you'd like to outline.
Sure. It's a big open question. Due North is a marketing agency, a digital marketing to be more precise. And I guess really at our core is search marketing. So how do you use Mr. Google on your website to drive business growth? We're a smallish team of 8 people. I guess one of our things we held on is it's senior team though. So sort of youngest guys, 34, 35 in the team. So everybody's got that 20 years plus marketing experience. Most of us have had our own business in different shapes and formats. So we kind of get business and marketing, which brings a bit of a different light to who we are. This is our 5th business over 18 years. So we started in the payment space. We basically took CBA's transactional banking products, put our logo on them and sold them to small business. So we did that for 10 years. We had a team of sort of 35 staff up and down the eastern seaboard at our peak, 22,000 customers. So we just got really good at marketing and sales. And that's really what self-taught, a few evolutions is where sort of Due North is today. As a person, married to an awesome lady called Sylvia, 2 great kids, 10 and 12. Just got a dog pre-corona, bought a house a couple of months ago. So it's at 2.3, live in the suburbs.
Dream.
Live in the dream. As you can tell by where I'm actually seated.
Yes.
And love the outdoors. So it's a lot of hobbies of camping and hiking and bike riding, anywhere away from civilization. This is something I don't think I've ever, we've known each other for a little while, but I don't think I've ever actually asked you this. It was about I have a general idea of why you call Due North, but if you'd like to tell everyone about that, but is there some of that passion, I guess, for the outdoors that I know you have, has that for the visuals and the way you guys present yourself, did that have some initial influence on that? Look, you got to say yes. Where it came from, basically paying a branding company $25,000 to build it for us, and obviously just part of that process was the naming process they took us through, and that's where they really pulled out, my love of the outdoors and those sort of concepts. And I guess for me personally, it fits really well into our business. Business is a journey. It's not just, it's very little about the destination, but it's about, let's plan the journey. How are we going to navigate it when we hit some road mines, landmines, road bumps, speed bumps? What are all the pieces to the puzzle that have got to go into it? And so it's very much a part of who I am at my core, and it's slotted in really well to my business's life as well. So it's kind of ticked all those boxes.
The navigation aspect of it too, that's always something that's, I think, actually works really well, because I think the first time when we sort of met, that was actually being people who work in that sort of space too, in our industry, but then in branding too. I was I get that. So it obviously works really well. It's that idea, because Due North is, I suppose, whilst people don't always they have a general understanding of what that represents, and it says navigation straight away. And your logo obviously too is that that relates to that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And it's all about heading forward, heading that northern direction.
Yeah.
There's some guys in far north Queensland. I can't remember their names, but it's they've basically got this quote: "If you're not going north, you're going nowhere," which I really liked.
Yeah, which is in some ways kind of not even about specifically going north, but it's about specifically going somewhere. It's like having
positive direction.
Yeah, it's like having a target, and obviously then for you guys to to help them kind of go there. Yeah. So what's because you guys have described yourself as or do you still describe yourself as a crack team as well?
Yeah, look, absolutely. So once again, coming back to the small group that we are, is they're just they're an amazing bunch. So I think sort of last count over my 18, 17 years of business, we've probably employed over 300 odd people. We've probably hired 20, 25 different consultants and experts. And it's the first time in my life that I'm super proud of the team I've got. So they're all individually really good at what they do. They work really well together. They feed off each other and bounce off each other. And as I said, they've all got that 20 plus years experience, which just brings an amazing ability to get the job done. So that don't have to manage them at all. They do what they're supposed to do. They bring initiative. So it's absolutely a crack team.
Yeah, I suppose I would imagine too that this might be obvious to some people listening to, but especially given that you're in this space and having quite clearly like a good understanding of and like a lot of experience in other businesses, not only in this space, gives you I would imagine like a completely different insight than into specifically what you're doing for other businesses, as opposed to like our industry, like the marketing industry and design and branding is filled, like I guess many industries are, with people who are very new to it, who don't have a wealth of experience that adds like a lot of extra weight and insight into what you can do like for other businesses.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely, wholeheartedly. And look, and I guess it's been a deliberate proposition as well. So once again, coming back to when we used to sit on the other side, when we were the client and we were looking for agencies. So I'll never forget I think it was the second SEO company we ever employed. 2 months into the experience, we were assigned account manager that would have been 23. And I remember our second monthly meeting, she's taking me through what they're doing in the monthly report. And then she's saying, well, here's the keywords we've got to focus on. And one of them wasn't even a product we offered, but she's gone, you've got to focus on it because of the search volumes. And I've gone, but we don't have that product. And she went on for half an hour. And at the end of the phone call hung up, I've gone, I'm now dumber than when I started this conversation 45 minutes ago. So it's those sort of experiences of dealing with a business owner, dealing with a 23-year-old account manager that has no worldly experience. Just, it doesn't work. Your marketing people need to be able to talk business to you, understand the practicalities of it, the limitations. They need to be able to get stuff done. I guess that was the other proposition is having people that can actually do the doing on the phone call versus, it gets taken by the account manager through to the production manager, through to the senior, and then down to the junior, and then it goes through forehand before it gets done. It takes too long. It costs too much. So it's been a deliberate model that's working really well.
And you play the game of Chinese whispers then, don't you?
Correct.
Of go, which is when you say it like that, when you say it in that context of Chinese whispers, it always sounds like a fun game that'll end in something like quirky and like strange happening. But in the business world, it's just a pain in the ass. It's just like, that ends up to, confusion, bad results, people not being happy with the service. And it's not the fun game of like Chinese whispers at all. It's the opposite. But like, it's so like I sometimes reflect on that, and I don't know what you think about this, but like I sometimes reflect on the fact that very simple idea is kind of at the heart of so many other things. Like just that simple, I like the example you gave, like the thing about somebody talking to you like for half an hour about something that's completely not relevant, just automatically we see that time and time again about just things being relevant, but people taking the time just to understand what is relevant. Like that at the heart of it, like everything else after that kind of doesn't work. You could be the most, like she could have been the most amazing person at her job. And she may have been like really good at certain things. But if you don't take the time to just have that simple understanding, which like maybe that comes from experience or just like simple listening or willingness to go, what is it that you want? And then if you're not sure, just ask more questions and just, be sure.
Yep.
Everything else after that just falls in a big pile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're all kind of guilty of that sometimes when you're talking to somebody you think's a bit smarter than you won't drill down and ask questions. So you learn that the hard way over time. So once again, I think that's as things as you grow older, you certainly learn more and more about that. And it was interesting. I was reading a book past couple of days called Deep Work by Carl something or other. I can't remember his name. But in there, there's a story about some consultants that are going into Oracle. Anyway, one of the big US software IT companies. I think it was Intel. And the CEO cuts them off halfway through the presentation or the discussion or something, and he goes, "We all know what to do, but none of us know how to do it." Right? So it's that kind of concept that a lot of people have this overview and idea of what it is that needs doing, but actually how to do it and how to do it really well is where people fall short time and time again.
I see it sometimes almost like the missing link. I mean, when people talk about the missing link in like, human evolution. And sometimes I've actually thought of that kind of point. There's that point in between where people know, like most people in their own business, for the most part, they're experts and they know what to do. They know that they've had experience, especially if they've been in business over 20 years. They generally know what to do because otherwise they probably would have like failed the business a long time ago. But then when it comes to that other part, then they don't know that missing link in between knowing and doing. There's this bit in between where, to some extent, the skill to maybe to bridge that is some level of translation. Like even between two people that both speak English, I think it sometimes be a very large communication gap. Even when everyone thinks they're being clear, there's this kind of like way to understand, which I think maybe gets back then to understanding again, or a willingness, to try to bridge that gap, because sometimes that can be hard, if there's cultural barriers, experience barriers, like you name it.
And look, I think you're spot on the mark. And there's just numerous aspects that go into it. People try and shortcut the process. They try and outsource it. It's kind of like they'll do whatever they can not to do it versus actually just, go and do it well.
It's not really then intentional too. And then of course, I mean, I still kind of marvel and sort of try to laugh about it, even though there's frustration, or try to remind myself that, if I've got a preconceived idea about what I think should happen, which like I'm free to admit that I do all the time. Like I'm always, I would like something to happen a certain way. Someone doesn't understand it. There must be something wrong with that, instead of like trying to remember that it's probably not the case, because most people don't go out to, to sabotage processes. They just don't.
No.
They're just there. They don't understand. So if they don't understand, like it's probably our job to help them understand, or to, to go, or just to work out why. And it could be like, it could be just not explaining it very well, or, there's any number of reasons, but it kind of getting back maybe to that same point of even a willingness to do it more and be a bit more patient, I suppose, because that's, because everyone's rush and having to get things done. But so with Due North, like what's been the, I guess maybe the evolution of where you were, where you've come to now with an emphasis, or like the role that you guys have for paid search, like for clients? Where do you see that, like how important is that for what you present to other people?
I guess I'll take you through a few points of that. So I guess it's probably, this is going to be a made up statistic, but for about probably 95% of businesses, search is really important in driving revenue. So both short term and long term, and more so for obviously different industries. So if you're a plumber, it's really important. If you're an accountant, it might be 80% important, or what. Once again, I'm kind of just throwing some figures in there, but ultimately it's the virtual real estate of today's world. Is so that the more real estate that you can own on the monopoly board, the better it is for you. So to that extent is we see it as a vital component of business. And I guess that also sort of lends itself to, it's probably 18 months ago or 2 years ago, a good acquaintance of mine in Brisbane called Paul was looking to sell his business. He'd spent sort of 15 or 20 years building it up. And after meeting with a few advisors, ultimately the value of a business is broken down into two core factors, right? One is your ability to get customers and obviously nurture those customers, long-term relationships. And then the other component's obviously the profitability of how you fulfill for those customers. So they're the two core components, and really marketing is all about that first component. So once again, in our book, it's the most important asset in your business is your marketing assets, because it drives customers, which drives the value of business long term. So in terms of importance, for us, is marketing is obviously one priority, and search is the number one priority of marketing. So that's sort of where we see it in terms of importance, and it's both paid and organic. So this concept of doing one and not doing the other, in our book doesn't work, right? So you need to be doing both, because they're both real estate that you need to own, because if you're not doing one, the other people are. So it's really how you get as much real estate on that first page as you can, but being ethical about it. So there's still people that are doing really dodgy shit with their marketing and their SEO and that sort of stuff, which we're obviously not big fans of. But it's really, how do you grow your results, your organic listings, your paid search results, so that your marketing's better, so it produces long-term assets. So that's sort of the importance of it. And I guess our evolution of getting to where we've got to, unfortunately, a lot of the time has been the hard way, right? So I remember, so just from our evolutionary purpose, we were one of the 2004, I think it was, we were one of the first companies in Australia to use Salesforce.com back in the day when it first came out. We stumbled into Mr. Google in 2005, about September. We're just getting heavily into obviously that first business doing outbound sales. I Googled a competitor name to find out who they were and what they were doing, because we got a quote that was better than ours. And that's when I saw the little AD. I think all that was highlighted back in the day. I've gone, oh, what's that? Why aren't we there? So half an hour later, we had an ad that I just built and up and running. And the next day, nothing happened. I've got, next day we got a lead through, which we closed that for, we made $600, and it cost me about, I think back then was about $7. So I've gone, this is awesome. Let's do more of this. So we spent the next couple of months getting better and better ourselves at it. And then I think we got up to about 15 grand in revenue that fourth month, give or take. And I thought there's got to be better people out there that can do this than us. So we did what we did. What everybody does, we Googled AdWords agency or company or something, whatever it was, and looked at 10 websites, phone interviewed 5, physically interviewed 3, and chose the one we thought was going to give us the best outcomes and results. And we launched, and then month 1 we were down 10%. So you ask the guys, what's going on? Why are we going backwards? It goes, we're learning, we're getting data through. This is just going to take some time. You go, okay, you kind of buy it. Month 2, we're down 15%. Same questions, same answers. Month 3, we're down 25%. So I'm going, guys, this is a bit ridiculous. So we sacked them, and within sort of 2 months, we were back to, within 2 weeks, we were back to the same levels we were pre-using them. So it was just, I guess, using that as a basis is that you treat the management of paid search and Google ads very differently when you're spending your own money. And I guess that's the sort of the aspect that we've brought to it. So over the years, we've spent just over $2 million of my own money on Google ads, because of how you can model it to produce the returns you need. But once again, as I said, you bring a very different perspective that every single dollar is really important. And, we need to maximize and optimize every spend, that it produces an outcome for your business. And ultimately, how you build a variable cost model. So, you know what, I'm spending $10 on Google Ads, I'm making 100. Let's spend 20 to make 200. Let's spend 1,000 to make 10,000. And you make sure you got the variable cost model set up, and then you scale it. So it becomes a really important component of your marketing game.
Yeah. I think the thing that, like in some of our conversations that we've had to just around these sort of subjects, it's kind of always been highlighted to me that your approach is quite clearly informed by a different level of experience, especially in the sense of what you were just talking about. The thing that, like, you know, we've had a lot of experience also with other SEO people, other people in our industry, even just on a conversational level, or actually working with people too over many years, and you know, seeing and hearing people's opinions on why things work, or what their emphasis even is, like that, what you were saying before about just that core understanding of how you should really approach it by going, what's your return on investment going to be if you spend X amount? If you want to achieve this, then you should be spending this. Makes a lot of sense when you talk like that to people, because that's how, you know, other things in business work. But that's hardly ever, this is a bit of a broad brush to paint, but it has always seemed to me that that's hardly ever the way that is talked about. Like it's actually not really spoken about like that, you know, like hardly at all. It's always about like some other aspect of it, which is still relevant. But once again, getting back to that core idea that you want to achieve something, we know a good way to do that is to spend this amount, and then you can do it. And then if you're happy with like the profit that you make or the return on investment, then great, that's good. You know, isn't that what you wanted to achieve? Yes. So, you know, then it's happy days. But if you don't have that conversation, then, you know, it becomes, you can understand why it becomes, I suppose, very frustrating and confusing. Like you obviously had that experience too. With that first person, was like, it's going down. And so then finally, like at what point when that was happening, was it like a long time after the fact that you then realized then why what they were doing was actually going down, or was it sooner?
Once again, you got to push my memory a little bit because it's a while ago. It's just what you learn, right? So you head down this path, and you choose some people. You also realize really quickly how important good people are. That's probably for another podcast. But you don't. The only way you really learn is, once again, is making mistakes, right?
Yeah, and that's totally.
Failure, or being uncomfortable, or being shown what you need to be doing. So through all that is I guess, and by way of background as well, as I'm an engineer, right? So I'm very methodical and analytical. And the beauty of, once again, of the digital space is you get access to all that data. So this first mob we used for Google Ads put some other software on top of Google Ads as a platform, and then they're obviously taking a cut of it. So the amount of data I could get from that system was less than what you can when you use Google Ads directly.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about, actually. Yeah, but
there's a few that used to do this.
Yeah.
But so when I was asking for the data, they couldn't give it to me. And so, you know what, then it becomes the rule is I need the data. So if I can't get the data, I have no interest in working with people, because it tells us what's working, what's not working. But I don't know why most Google Ads companies and people still don't use the data. It is fascinating. So I reckon 80% of the leads we speak to, that they're not tracking all the leads and outcomes to a business. They're still not, to this day. It is fascinating, but it's still not an outcomes-driven campaign versus...
Isn't that what it's all... That's why, I mean, like, that's... I've been doing this for a long time too, but that's kind of astounding to me. I mean, I know people don't use tools properly, but that's kind of one of the key aspects, like if not one of the key powers of the whole reason for doing it is which was going to be like a further question I was going to ask you, is sort of an associated topic about the power of business analytics just in general then too, that you can get from like the data and even from like outside of leads, which is why you're doing it in the first place, but even then as a business analytics tool for understanding other things, it's like top, it's incredibly useful.
Mate, it is everything. It is so important to do. But I think, I'm not sure what happens, and this would be a fascinating study, but I think a couple of things happen over people's time. So one is that some of them are technically competent from a execution perspective, but really lack that business nous in terms of what it is. So they might know that this is how you do keyword research, or this is what budget allocation should be, or this is what it is, but they're not. There's a very disconnect to this keyword has generated 42 inquiries for us versus this keyword's generated none, right? Therefore, we shouldn't be either there's something going wrong with that keyword that's generating none, or we've got to get rid of it. So that there's a disconnect in the level of detail as well as the outcomes to a business. But it's also, so I tried this marketing gimmick last year of being proudly not Google certified, right? So I've sat the Google tests and done their course, and they are atrocious. So they mean well and they give you an okay idea,
yep.
But in terms of good campaign management to outcomes of your business, they're pretty woeful. When you normally when you've got a Google Ads account as well, as you'll get assigned an account manager from time to time from Mr. Google, that he or she will call you up. Generally, they've historically been based in India, to say, let's run through your account so I can help you improve things.
Yeah, happens every week for me. Yeah.
I just kept a running tally of what their recommendations were.
Yeah.
It was about a 4 or 5 month period. Over 90% of their recommendations was to increase bids across the board. That was their recommendation for 90% of the time. And you're going, that's good for you.
They are running their own business too, aren't they?
Correct, but that's good for you, but it's not good for anybody else.
No, that's right. I mean, that's the deal, isn't it? Is that I've always said, like, and because for the most part we don't do what you're doing. We might talk to people about it, and generally people have a conversation. And then refer them over to people like yourself. But then, whenever occasionally clients will go, I had this call from, I think it's Google, and that's their problem too, is they always don't actually sound like Google. And they always sound like a person who's trying to pretend to be Google, which is a problem in itself, which they'll have to deal with.
Quite a few of those.
Yeah, they'll have to deal with, but that sort of muddies the waters, but that's their issue. But then they go, and they said to do this, what should I do? And I said, generally, I don't know what they're saying, but I would say don't do it, because, for the most part, they're going to be, they want you to use it more, which isn't necessarily the right thing. Before you start doing more, start thinking about what you're doing, and then, get advice, have a strategy, work out. Don't just, do what your mate next door says or what you think you should rank for, because, with all due respect, in the business, mentally who that is, but it's not necessarily going to translate into keywords. In fact, it might sound like the perfect keyword, but it might have 5 people looking at it every month, which is going to be useless.
Correct.
And then, because ultimately, like you would know, as the engineer-minded sort of person, it's like a numbers game. It's like if you get 10 people, or even if you had 100 people searching for your month, every month, and you want to achieve a certain goal, but your conversion rate is 15, 20% out of 100 people to get to your site. Then by the time they contact you, then by the time they, perhaps convert, that might be 5 people, which may be a quarter of what your goal is. and therefore it's probably not a good keyword, And so just like all that simple numbers stuff is kind of, is also that missing link too. It's kind of in between good intentions, general idea, and then outcomes is there's like this big area in between
of analysis that is really missing. Look, you spot on the mark.
Yeah.
It's look, another fascinating thing that's coming out of Google at the moment is they've got a real push for automated bidding strategy, which and so they're saying and look, a lot of people also push this is to put all clients onto this automated bidding, so you don't need to do it. So it's obviously from an agency perspective, it makes your life easier. Yeah. But we've never, ever seen it work. We've tried it hundreds of times. But here's the thing I don't get, right? So it's an auction system. So you've got 10 people that are bidding, or 10 companies are bidding on one keyword, and they're all on automated bidding. What happens? Everything just goes up. So it's fascinating that's a proposition that allows from a company that obviously manages and runs it all that's kind of collusion, right? So it's saying Jim's Plumbing is going to increase bids on Bob's Plumbing. So Bob's Plumbing is going to increase bids so that Bruce's Plumbing can increase bids. So back to Jim's Plumbing's increasing bids. So all it's doing is just everybody's bids are going up. It's fascinating.
Oh, it's a fantastic business model for Google. It's awesome. It's like, if I was Google, I'd be like high-fiving every minute, but like the fact is that if you took the same approach, like I sold something on eBay today, which made me happy. I sold a squash racket. So, but if I was the person buying, and if it was in a auction system, like is that person going to be completely cool with the fact that they'll, if somebody else bids, $45, then $55, that they're just going to be absolutely fine with the fact that they'll just automatically add another $10 every time on top of that? Probably not. But they still want something. It's still the same principle, is that you're wanting something. I mean, the outcome, of course, isn't the same. You aren't getting then a product, but you're going to get an opportunity to, to get, you're still wanting to get something out of it. And so the principle's the same, but like the willingness to do that on one hand is, is kind of, fine when it's delivered in like the sales pitch like that. And I mean, it is like I'm exactly the same. I wouldn't, if anyone said, would I turn this up? Please don't do that. Like, don't. If I'm going to do AdWords myself, please don't do that. Like, that's advice. Please don't do that, because one, it's going to give, it's going to like, you might get lucky, and some people do, and then they don't understand why, and they're like, I'm an expert, but like, go to Ben, get some sound advice, and then at least you'll have like something to measure against, instead of like drifting into the ether and kind of, seeing what happens, and then getting disappointed, and then like, blaming the internet for it. And then, blaming like, you're blaming all things technical, which is not good for anyone, mainly for the business, but
just blow your money.
It's not good for everyone's sort of reputation. But, so as I'm just getting back to, I guess, like when you're talking to clients and you're talking to them about then their business as a whole too, and you're using these tools for SEO and or Google Ads, like to sort of help them get leads, but then to analyze their business, what sort of things I know it's different from business to business, but what sort of things do you talk to them about in terms of it being a business analytics tool as well?
So I think probably there's probably two big things that always we really want to focus on at the start and get right. And I guess the first one's it's a word I hate, which is really the strategy component, but it's traditional marketing strategy. And I think this is, once again, we've mentioned gaps a few times, and I think this is one of the bigger ones with today's digital marketing agencies. They're actually a digital agency. They do very little marketing. So ultimately, the strategy component is really all about who are we selling what to and how are we going to find more of them, right? Who's target audience? People are still, vast majority of companies still don't have a clarity around who as their ideal clients. And one of the bigger missing pieces is that value proposition. So from it's not features and benefits. It's, what's that a real emotional connection that somebody's going to have with your business? Yeah. What is that, and how do we then bring that to life through digital channels? And the final piece to that puzzle is obviously the journey, right? So marrying up target audience and value proposition, how are we adding that value at every part of a potential client and client customers interaction with your business? So the ads in the Google ads, what's the value you're communicating there? When they come through to the landing page, what value are they getting? What's the social proof they need to see because we've identified their pain points in the target audience, right? So what's the journey they need to go on? What's the information they're going to find really engaging? When that phone rings, what should you be saying to making sure they're getting some value from it and you're addressing their pain points? So when the theory or the strategy side of the equation is really missing. The current digital marketing companies, a strategy is all about choosing some keywords, or it's about getting a landing page designed or set up. That's not strategy. Strategy is all about the customer side of the equation, and then it's how you bring it to life, the execution. And you need to underpin that with the analytics, right? So you need to know that what's working and what's not, and what do we do more of, and how do we fix what's not working.
I mean, the thing is too is that when we're talking about this in this particular way, it always sounds, and it is like the common sense way to approach it. Why wouldn't you do it like that? It's like sort of saying, why wouldn't you? In some ways, I've had this experience over many years, like when we've had clients who have a business mentor, a business coach, and then there's like a marketing team, and then there's us. Why wouldn't, it makes so much sense for everyone to kind of talk to each other and go and talk about like the value proposition and talking. So everyone's kind of on completely the same page about every aspect of it, but then it's usually not the case. And I think that's sometimes because it just organically happens like that, because the client is choosing like who's working, and they choose not to have everyone talking together, or people don't get along, or it's not a part. Or I think probably the bigger picture, my theory is that like the bigger picture is that most people kind of just want to keep fairly insular, and they want to do their own thing, and they're not, there's no real, obvious benefit to them doing that except for helping the client out. So most people don't. They're like, yeah, whatever, just kind of, it's not a big emphasis, but there's so many benefits to doing it.
Yeah, it's a couple of things about it. I think it's that concept of common sense is not all that common. It's one of those famous quotes. Look, I think the other thing, and we once again we learned this the hard way. Prior to Due North, we had another digital marketing company that I would classify as the current was a standard digital marketing company, and for some reason, marketing has got very product specific. So you'll have one company that does your SEO, you'll have one company that does your Google ads, you'll have one company that does your website, you'll have a marketing coordinator, and it's that disparity is that nobody's on the same page, that nobody has a clear understanding of what that value proposition is, or the business owner does, but it's not communicated well. So once again, it's how do you build a whole system that's always communicating the same and right messages in the right process so that it's all cohesive. It's that concept of everything works better when it works together. That 1 + 1 = 5 kind of concept.
Yeah. And it ties in just it's a perfect symbiotic relationship with then everything that like a brand agency would usually talk about as well, with consistency equals trust. And but then that often doesn't, from once again, if we're talking about gaps in communication and a process, you might have, then an agency that does that. but then the client either then hands it over then to the marketing agency, and everything that was learnt from that is either kind of ignored or just not passed on in the right way, or people don't chat to each other. And sometimes it's just as simple as, hey, we've been doing this, and but then sometimes brand guidelines too, and then from your end, some of the branding, even though you're not a brand agency, it's funny because like a lot of, if you took, I think in some essence, some of what you're saying out of context, you'd be going, is that guy from a brand agency? Because like everything that you're talking about, and it is, like I'm sort of serious, because like the language and things you're talking about aren't, I think, what a lot of people would commonly associate with just, that particular service that you're talking about, because it's not commonly discussed. But once again, common sense, strategic, and things that you need to get all your ducks in a row, and you get all this stuff, and it makes everyone's life easier. It's nice and clear, and everyone's cool with it, and then things work better. There's like having a good machine that runs well. There's all its parts work nicely, and it's well oiled up, and so forth. I don't know anything about cars, by the way, but I'm sure that's how they work.
Just speak with confidence, and people believe that you know a lot.
Well, that is how cars work. Oh, well, actually, not really modern cars. They're like huge computers, but generally cars and people. It keeps the water. Yeah. So just in the like, how would you? I would just be interested also to know, Ben, like when there's that idea too, especially with things like AdWords and SEO, and we're talking about a lot of data and information. How do you guys when you're then quantifying and putting into a form where you're explaining results and things to clients? What's your approach to doing that? Because I know a lot of people generally, especially if they haven't, like even if they have some exposure to it, it's very easy to be overwhelmed with all that information. How do you kind of explain it to people to assist them in making sense of it?
There's two core components to that. One's obviously the data itself and how you present the data, and then there's the meeting, the management of the channels, and they sort of go hand in hand. I guess ultimately it's same as any part of your business. It's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. And then of each of those, and obviously the shorter term is more summary based versus longer term becomes more detailed, and you can get stuck in the data. So daily quick check, was yesterday up, was it down? So it's a yes or a no. It's one or two figures to see, up or down. Weekly is once again and this is all dashboard, so it's got to be all real time. Click a button, you get everything you need. Weekly's high level. Are we, once again, is organic visitors up? Are they down? Are our Google Ads visitors up? Are they down? Are our conversions or revenue up and down? And then we also want to look at week on week data. So looking back, maybe like we actually look back over the past sort of 18 months or so in week by week, but over the past 4 weeks, is the trend positive? Is it negative? Or is it stationary? So that, do we need to adjust a course accordingly? Have we dropped 30% last week that we didn't know about? And once again, that's got to be part of a discussion that you have with your team internally and or externally. And then monthly, same thing. At high level, monthly results. Do we meet the monthly target? Do we not? What is each channel giving us? Is paid doing its thing? Is it not? What conversions? What keywords are driving conversion? What keywords aren't? So it's really that management and analytics going hand in hand that drives the growth of the business.
Yeah, sure. I mean, once again, that's I guess I'm coming also from the perspective of, when from a visual side of things too, do you have any sort of strategies, like even I guess in summary form, about showing things in a way that's more visually appealing, or you don't really feel that that's like, for the most part, because it's numbers and things just have to be summarized in a simple form that it's not really relevant?
It's a simple form. It's colors. green for where we have green for good, red for bad, and it's arrows up or down. We're not, once again, we're not pretty fluffy people, so we don't have a 32-page proposal showing how bloody shit hot we are. We don't produce amazing graphs that a 14-page report that you can take to your board. Like, for us, that's all fluff and smoke and mirrors that doesn't tell you the information you need. You know, and it's the numbers, analyze it properly, and it tells you what's working and what's not. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, that certainly has a strong appeal, I think, for most people. There's always people who are, you know, that's why we have designers like us, I guess, you know, is to do where required and where appropriate, like the fluffy design stuff, because of course, the importance of design. But you're right. I mean, there's a place for everything, isn't there? There's a place for, you know, good design, and there's a place where it's not. It's it can hinder. You know, it can hinder
absolutely.
It can hinder comprehension. But then again, you could also argue that. I mean, I would, even being a visual person for the most part, I've sort of always maintained that, like, good design doesn't mean that it is fancy. It means it's good design.
Correct.
If it's simple, it's good.
Right design for the right target audience.
For the right target audience, and to do its job. I mean, it might end up being that the result of that is that it is what, you know, people consider to be more fancy or more fluffy. If it's suitable, then if it's not the result, then that's not good design.
Correct.
Good
absolute
design,
agreement.
Good design in all things.
Yep. It's a beautiful craft, very important, and it brings smiles to people's faces. So
totally, yeah. So just in sort of, I guess, I'm sort of wrapping up. Just as one of the final sort of questions, have you ever had any thoughts, especially, I guess, in the current environment and the fact that, you know, technology is well, and has been in recent times changing sort of so quickly. Have you got any thoughts about, like, how you see, more specifically, paid search evolving over the next, like, 3 to 5 years?
It's interesting. The more I look at the fundamentals of paid search, the more it actually hasn't changed, which is really interesting. Even over the past 10 years, the fundamentals of it haven't changed. Google continues to do a good job of maximizing his revenue in that space. So there was some changes he brought out late last year that there's a thing called exact match keywords and phrase match keywords and broad match keywords in there, right? And all of a sudden, effectively, he shifted phrase match, so if you had plumber Brisbane, phrase match meant you have to have plumber Brisbane in the keywords that are typed in. He effectively changed that to a broad match, right? So he's just shifted everything to make more money, which is what he does. But so there's those intricacies that play into the mix. But once again, you can't actually control them. So you can't focus on controlling them. That's what they are. So in our book, it's, you know, just continue to do the right things, focus on what you can control, and you'll be rewarded accordingly. So we actually don't have a major focus of keeping up with technology because you can't control it. You've got to go with it. But the fundamentals of doing really great marketing always win out. So all this, once again, coming back to this, digital marketing should actually be called marketing digitally, right? It should not be called digital marketing, because calling it digital marketing, it puts the focus on digital capabilities, which once again, 80 or 90% of our competitors may be quite digitally competent, but they're marketing incompetent. That's probably a bit of a strong word. But so their focus is on technology and technically being digital, whereas I think we've got a really different bent. For us, it's, you know, we're a marketing company that uses digital channels. And I think, and once again, SEO is no different, right? The only thing you should be focusing on from an SEO point of view is to do great marketing. And that will then be rewarded by SEO results, which will drive that real estate proposition earlier. So once again, our whole focus is let's just do great marketing, and the technicalities of updates and changes take care of itself.
Well, the tools aren't really things in themselves. Like the racket doesn't make the player number one in the world. Yeah, it's the player that makes the number one.
Correct.
So it's yeah. I mean, look, it's a core part of everything that we do. From websites and apps, and I have of course a huge interest in technology, but I'm exactly the same. Like that's exactly what they are. They're purely tools. They're tools to communicate. Like something, it always has to start with a good idea and a good, a solid plan. Good idea, wins out over everything else.
Correct. Spot on the mark.
So Ben, at this point, I'm going to ask you to provide us with a quote that you like. It could be relevant or something that sort of inspires you, or you just like.
Yep. Actually, can I give you two? I was just thinking about this.
A minute or seconds?
Sorry?
Oh, two. All right. I thought you said, can you give me two minutes? No, sorry.
No. Two quotes.
No, that's too long.
All right. Okay, so I love this one, and I kind of discovered it last year, and it was really, I can't remember where I got it from, but it was really that concept of the purpose of life is to discover your gift. The work of life is to develop it, and the meaning of life is to give your gift away. And I think that really resonated with me where I was in life. So I'm now 43, but I feel like I've spent the past 20 years discovering what my gift is. And that's really my love of marketing. We're working really hard of how we get better and better at what we do. And then obviously it's we love helping businesses that want to share their gift. And that was a really profound find for me.
That's a great quote. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, and the other one I really love is by John Muir, who's an Australian explorer, and his quote was, "Always carry with you a book about struggles that are greater than your own," because it just puts into context that, what, life's not that bad. There's people out there going through a lot worse than you are. So it
makes things, it puts everything into context, doesn't it?
Yep. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks so much, Ben. Thank you, and thanks once again for taking the time to have a chat today. It was awesome.
Pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
So with that in mind, that's actually it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening into our podcast yet again. Before we go, please leave your feedback as well as any suggestions for topics that you would like us to discuss in any future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Grow Your Business podcast, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Grow Your Business.